Hey, welcome everybody. This is Rick Kaufman, your host with the Kels Group, aka the Drowning Warriors, episode number 42. Yes, number 42. Wow. We are getting it done here in 2019. It is January 31st. The first month of 2019 has come and it is on its way out. I don't know if I want to say it's on its way out like a lion, but it is freaking cold out. I mean, we're talking wind chills of like negative 25 to 35 below zero here in Ohio. And I tell you what, if you was up in North Dakota or Minnesota, hey, I feel sorry for you. Negative 40s and 50s degrees. Negative 40, 50 degrees. Crazy cold weather. If you're down south, hey, I really feel sorry for you with your 20s and 40s and whatnot. So, hey, you know what? But just think about it. Spring is right around the corner. It is summer someplace. People are taking part of swimming and enjoying the beaches and enjoying the warm weather someplace in the world. It's just not us, right? But we're here with our returning guest, our first returning guest, Jaimie Clout. She is the Aquatics Director with the city of Bristol, Connecticut. So we're going to be talking about all kinds of things that involve her job as an Aquatics Director, and maybe we'll probably jump into a few other things, but we're going to have a good time. I've got my nice warm cup of Java, my coffee. It's going to help me stay warm, and at least, if anything, keep my hands warm because the furnace is working on overtime today, along with our wood-burning stove and pellet stove and all those things. So with that being said, let's cue the music and let's get this show started because I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk.
Hello, I'm Rick Kaufman. I'm part of a new breed of people. We call ourselves the Drowning Warriors. We have a voice for those who no longer have a voice, and for those that do have a voice, we project it as loud as we can because what we know can and does save lives. We wage war every day with people that just don't believe that it can happen to them. We must do things differently. We take massive action as a team. We must do things smarter. We must also be effective with our message from day one. You see, the average person does not believe that it can happen to them, but yet it happens every day. Drowning does not discriminate. It has no boundaries. It is fast. It is silent. It hits when you least expect it. So we fight every day to be heard, to get our messages out to the masses. We are the Drowning Warriors, and these are our stories.
All right, everybody. Hey, this is Rick Kaufman, your host with the Kels Group, a.k.a. the Drowning Warriors. And today is a first. The first of probably others to come, but we actually have Jaimie Clout. She is the Aquatics Supervisor and Director with the city of Bristol, Connecticut. We actually had the opportunity to meet her in person, so it's like we have one fan we got to see in person. How's that? But hey, we are just really excited to have her back for a second time, and we're going to be talking about some different things. And actually, if you want to know a little bit more about her and listen to the previous show, is actually I will reference this in our show notes also, but it was episode number 28 where we spotlighted Jaimie there with her program in Bristol. But Jaimie, hey, I want to welcome you back to the Drowning Warriors.
Hi, Rick. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not only that, I think when we recorded this back in October, the weather was much better than what it is now. This is the end of January. This will be airing the first week of February, but I think I would much rather go back to October weather or maybe even summer weather.
Me too.
Yeah. Hey, Jaimie, just real quickly, just give us a little bit about what you do there with as an aquatic supervisor.
So my job with the City of Bristol is to recruit and train qualified lifeguards for our indoor pool and also our 2 outdoor pools. We are a large-sized city right near Waterbury and Hartford, kind of nestled in there in between. We are the city where ESPN is. So we employ roughly 100 lifeguards during our summer season, as well as keeping about 50 on staff year-round. So our operations are lifeguarding for outdoor pools as well as an indoor pool seasonally.
Wow. I didn't know it was that many lifeguards.
Yes.
I know we were just talking about another park, and they employ like 400 or 500, and I thought, not only that, but when we were there in January 6th, I noticed that ESPN was just down from my. I thought that was the coolest thing. I drove down the road on the way to your aquatic complex there, and it's like, well, I felt like I was almost in the land of famous people. We
are quite lucky.
Oh yeah, that was really cool. My wife, she's a camera buff. Lori is, and we have a whole bunch of pictures of the building and even of the satellite dish of all things.
They've got quite the operation over there.
But anyways, hey, I appreciate you taking the time here, and one of the things I think I would like to really focus on a little bit, but talking with you about is, you mentioned the numbers of people that you employ as far as lifeguards, and then now do you strictly just see that part, or what about other people within the facility? Are you also supervising other staff members that may not be directly involved with the pool but work there in the complex?
Yeah, so we have maintenance staff as well as desk staff, attendants. We also employ security guards. So we have a whole wheelhouse of staff members that are related to our recreation and aquatic operations.
Okay. Yeah, that's, one of the things is with the podcast, as I talk with a lot of aquatic supervisors and directors, I really have found that, when you really think, okay, they're an aquatic supervisor, so they just really kind of manage the pool. But really, you do so much more than that. A big part of what you do, I'm sure, is probably involved around training. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Training is our number one priority here.
Okay. Now, let's start with, let's say somebody wants to be a lifeguard. So if somebody's listening to this and maybe they've let their certifications lapse, or maybe they're, 15, 16, 17 years old, or maybe mom and dad are like saying, hey, kid, you need to go get a job. Why don't you be a lifeguard? Because you just live at the pool all the time anyway. So
yeah.
What would somebody really need to know, or what would somebody have to do if they wanted to become a lifeguard?
So you can take the course at age 15 through the American Red Cross. The prerequisite requirements are you have to be able to swim, obviously, but you need to be able to swim a 300-yard continuously. So that's about 16 laps without stopping. And there's also a course involved, so it's classroom and time spent in the water. So you need to have an athletic background. You need to be able to have the endurance to participate in at least 8 to 10 hours of classroom and in-water skills a day. So the course itself is actually quite rigorous.
Now, did they just reduce you said 300, did it used to be 400 by chance, or?
If you're lifeguarding outside, like in a waterfront, it's actually 550 yards.
Okay.
So there's a differentiation between pool lifeguarding and waterfront lifeguarding.
Okay. Now, once you have, now we're on the north part of the United States. You're on the northeast in Connecticut, and so it's still cold, snowy, and yucky outside. So when do you start, or facilities that probably are in hibernation, I guess is a better way to put it right now, when do they start looking to either bring their staff back or maybe start looking to hire new people?
So we run our lifeguard training year-round, but we start really recruiting for our summer season in January, and we run lifeguarding courses in December and February to accommodate our needs for our seasonal operations.
Okay. Oh, so now is that pretty typical as far as you know, with a lot of other aquatics facilities to run programs like that all year long?
Yes. Usually facilities are looking to do most of their recruitment and training in the wintertime when there's more pool space available.
Okay. Now, when I was, my wife and Lori and I, we came out there to watch a live demo of the Wave system, which is new technology coming out. And so, we had the opportunity to be at your facility. So let me just say that it was a beautiful facility. It was much. I saw some pictures of it, and I guess it's like going to a football stadium. What you see on TV, and then you get there, and it's like, whoa, it's a lot bigger or whatever it looks like. But is that a full size? Is that what you would consider a full size Olympic size pool?
So our pool is 25 yards by 25 meters.
Okay.
So it's a competition pool, not quite an Olympic size pool.
Okay. Just was kind of trying to figure out what, when you're watching the Olympics and, people like Michael Phelps swimming. And so when you're saying 16
They're
laps.
They're swimming in 50-meter pools.
Yeah, okay. So there's quite a bit of difference then, really.
So our pool is 25 yards.
Okay. Now, right now, as far as your pool, what's taking place during the wintertime in a facility like yours right now?
So one would think that during the wintertime we slow down, but this is actually our busiest season. We're home to 5 swim teams, so our operations are over 110 hours a week. We have activities that start at 5 a.m. and they leave at 11 p.m., so we are quite busy during this time of year.
Now, does your local school system there, do they have swim teams too?
Yes, they actually have 2. So we have 2 high schools in this city.
Okay. Now, do they have their own pools, or do they utilize your facilities?
Unfortunately, they don't have their own facility, so their home pool is our pool when we're the Dennis Malone Aquatic Center.
Okay. Well, the reason why I was kind of asking that question was, did you follow the case in Texas that involved some of the high school team there, where the coaches?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that? Okay.
Yes, I am.
I don't know all the particulars about that. I just know that there was no, the swim coaches were, working with the athletes, and a girl drowned. And there was no lifeguard on duty. And I know in Texas, and I think, and I did check in Ohio, several other states, they don't have laws or anything like that say that if you have a swim team, and I guess the swim coaches are probably certified, so they actually can perform duties as a lifeguard, I would assume. But no lifeguard was is mandated or required to be on duty. Being that you have your pool, you have your own lifeguards. If the high school is utilizing your pool, or maybe another facility, is it typically do you have lifeguards there when people are utilizing the pool?
So surprisingly, there are a lot of facilities out there that are running swim team practices with just their coaches on deck and not having specific lifeguards that are designated to watching the pool during those swim team, activities. And we do not operate that way. Our general standard is to have at least 2 guards on at all times during any operations that are going on in the pool. So be it water exercise, fitness classes, swim teams, we always have at least 2 lifeguards on. And that's more of a Connecticut thing. Although it may not be a law, the standard here, because Connecticut is such a progressive state in water safety, you're going to find lifeguards where swim team practices are.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that with me, because that's, where I was kind of heading with this is, I think this situation set a precedence. I think opened eyes to the community. First of all, if I was a swim coach, I've been a coach and coached varsity sports and everything from mostly not just mostly soccer to be exact, but everything from all the way from youth age up to collegiate level in soccer, and the Ohio Pre-Olympic program. I was involved with that also, which is now the ODP, which is the Parks Department program. But they have, I know as a coach, you might be giving individual instruction to one of your athletes and helping them through a particular thing. And then, like an outdoor sport, I might send the rest of the team and say, hey, run these drills, run laps, do Indian runs, whatever we would have them do, while I would be giving 100% of my attention to the situation that I was currently working on. And I'm assuming, would swimming be something similar to that?
Yes, it would be. Most coaches I know, at least in Connecticut, I can't speak to every other state. In Connecticut, they're required to have safety training for swim coaches, and that's a Red Cross training program that does give them the basics of water safety and how to conduct practices while, making sure that everyone is safe. So they do at least have to have that minimum requirement. And now there is also requirements for concussion training because that has been such a concern in the swimming world, especially as of lately.
Well, explain a little bit more about that, because I would not think. I guess if you're swimming, you could probably run into the wall. I don't know. I can understand it in outdoor sports and contact sport, but that surprises me. Explain a little bit more about that.
Right. So you're definitely at least common in that regard. Most people don't think concussions when they think of swimming, and we really, unfortunately, have the NHL and the NFL to thank for doing and shedding so much light on the concerns regarding traumatic brain injuries that can result from concussions. And swimmers definitely can experience concussions if they're hitting each other, while they're swimming, or if they're hitting the wall. And it's something that we've seen in the aquatic world. It's something that we've seen in this facility and other facilities that I've worked at. So there's a lot of stress in the aquatic world to be educated on concussion safety and how to prevent it, and also how to screen for it, and how to make sure that our athletes are staying safe while they're swimming.
Wow. Yeah, that's news to me. Like I always say, every one of these podcasts, I learned something new, and I just did. I myself have probably had multiple, and I mean probably more concussions than I can count on both hands, because when I played sports, nobody really cared. You got knocked on the head and maybe got knocked out. You just stayed in the game. Actually, I remember an incident where it was my senior year in high school, and I was playing soccer, and I basically dove forward and went head first into a goalpost. It knocked me out, but I stayed in the game, and it was homecoming night, and I took my date out to dinner at homecoming, and one of the signs of a concussion is you get really sick. And I'm sitting there at the table at the restaurant, and I just vomit all over the table. I can laugh about it now, but she takes me home, and they wind up taking me to the emergency room, and they say, "Oh, you have a concussion." I guess it was a pretty good one, but then on Monday I was right back on the field playing. I mean, that's just
right.
The way it was, and I will probably here in the next 5-10 years, who knows, I might have issues with that, but hopefully not. But no, that's something that I just wouldn't have really thought about, and that would also be obviously anytime somebody's in water, they're at risk of drowning, but when you add concussion to that, or somebody maybe, just like you said, maybe bumping, what might seem like a very normal process, if they're swimming and kind of get out of their lane or whatever, then they kind of bump heads or get hit in the head or something like that. That could potentially be a drowning risk, would it not be?
It does happen, yes, absolutely.
Okay, probably a lot more in open water would be much. I guess probably that's something triathletes probably, because they all go in the water at the same time. But that's probably another program. We can talk about that one with a triathlete. But well, one of the things is where I was kind of getting at with the coaches here is when we came out there to watch the wave. The demonstration for the drowning detection technology. I was thinking about, on the way home, one of the things I was thinking about this case in Texas. There's a situation, and I don't know if I explained to you about, there's a 6-year-old boy in Dayton, Ohio that drowned this past summer. And he was 6 years old, and he was attending swim lessons at the local pool. It was an indoor-outdoor type of pool, I think. Like they had walls that opened up or something, but it had a roof over top of it. And he evidently the swim instructors lost track of him. The grandfather comes in, looks for him, can't find him. And the swim instructor says, "We'll go check the locker room." On the whole time, he was at the bottom of the deep end, and the swim instructors were in the pool. They claim they couldn't see because of the reflection of the sunlight, because of the light. the facility was indoors, but had windows or what the sides were open or whatever, so there was a lot of light coming in, and so it wasn't, and then the water was kind of murky and not really as clear as what it should be. I just in the news the other day, they just announced they settled with the family for like $1.5 million. But one of the things is when I think about the drowning detection technology, whether or not it's the wave or something like this, if I was a swim coach, and the liability, I think the precedence this sets, I mean, I would think having something as a backup system, I believe, would be very, very, very important as a backup to, say, myself as a coach, especially if there's no lifeguards, helping me scan the pool. If I'm in the water, working with my athletes, and there's not a lifeguard either in the chair or roaming the deck and keeping an eyeball on what else is going on in the pool. I mean, anything that would be a backup would be a plus. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So what you've just described is absolute worst case scenario for everyone, obviously, and it's a very terrible, tragic incident. My heart goes out to the family and friends of that child. That's just something that shouldn't happen. And unfortunately, like I said, it's worst case scenario, and it sounds like there were a number of factors involved, and I don't want to speculate on what exactly was going on in that facility, but that's something that no one wants to hear, and especially being an aquatic manager and supervisor, those are all the scenarios that we're trying to prevent. And the wave system, the greatest thing about it is that it works in conjunction with lifeguards, and it works best with a facility that is using lifeguards for all operations, including swimming lessons. And just as a side note, as a parent of a child myself, I would never want to take my child to a facility that offered swimming lessons but didn't have lifeguards watching over the lessons as they were occurring. So just as that, because it's so important to make sure that there is lifeguards and that there are parents and there are designated water watchers. And the wave system is certainly it's optimistic. It's a shining light in everything that could be for aquatic regulation. And as an aquatic supervisor, something like wave is really inspiring and encouraging and necessary. So it's absolutely something that we would welcome into the industry.
Yeah, it just, when I was on my way home after viewing that demo, I was just thinking how important that is. And I know as a coach myself and coaching, we were concerned, obviously drowning wasn't an issue, but weather was. A lightning strike, there were so many factors that you would have. And I know we had static detectors, so it would be able to detect static charge in the air to let you know, even though it may not look like there's a storm close by, but there are safety features at a lot of the local schools and facilities that are outdoors to be able to detect the potential of a lightning strike,
right?
Which is which you think, okay, is also probably just as preventable as drowning. And I know lightning strikes aren't. There's a lot more lightning strikes, but not so much lightning strikes that probably result in death as there is drownings, that result in death. And not only that, but also the non-fatal drowning side of things. And so, there's technology in all aspects of so many sports and venues. But when I look at the aquatic side of things, the swimming side, there's not as much technology. The triathletes have technology. I know a lot of them wear ankle bracelets on their swim that kind of keeps track of them and things like that. I don't know exactly how it works, but it is something similar to where they can kind of keep track of people. But again,
GPS technology.
Okay, yeah, and so that way they can, but again, there's people out there on, kayaks and canoes and boats and stuff that are close by that, if there is a swimmer that might be in trouble, they can, hopefully react to that before, they actually get notified. And I think with a lot of the technology that's especially the one that we saw there at your facility, is one of those technologies that is it will detect a person maybe before the actual drowning may take place. It gives whatever time frame, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds so if the lifeguard doesn't recognize that in that amount of time, that they will be notified. And so I just look at technology as a thing that it's every place else, but one place it's not is in the pools with our kids.
Right.
It's still, things are still being operated like it was 20, 30 years ago. And I think when you talk training with your lifeguards, I mean, what are some of the things, that when you're doing training with lifeguards that maybe the average person may not quite understand? I think in our last program we talked, in our last episode, because my daughter drowned in a public pool and an outdoor pool during the summertime, many people use those as babysitter drop-offs because it's open during the daytime while mom and dad are at work, or they go with other friends and family, and so that poses a particular problem. But are these things, are these part of their training, like training and working with lifeguards?
Yes, it is. So most of our training, and I want to say at least 90% of it, is all about preventing drowning, and that's why our lifeguards are here. That's the message that we're focusing on when we're conducting our training, is preventing any accident, preventing drowning from happening. And you're right, we've entered in a day and age where many people associate lifeguards with being babysitters, and it's a scary concept. Facilities need to have strict rules, and we have very strict rules regarding supervision. We don't allow, any children to be within the facility without a parent or guardian, and we don't allow non-swimmers to be in our pool without an adult supervising them directly one-on-one in the pool within arm's length of that swimmer. So the rules are very important, and our lifeguards are important in enforcing the rules and focusing on prevention. So we try to equip ourselves with the best knowledge and tools that are out there.
Right. Yeah, it's obviously prevention is probably paramount when you talk about water safety, and when it comes to a lifeguard. What's the average age of a lifeguard, generally speaking?
In Connecticut, we are allowed to hire lifeguards at 15. So we have, I want to say, at least 50% of our staff is between 15 to 18. And then also, we do employ college age and adult age lifeguards as well. But honestly, the majority of our guards are between 15 and 19 years old.
How many of those typically come back year after year?
At the high school age, we generally start, as of, freshman, sophomore year, whenever they're 15, and most of them do come back every season and stay with us until they at least go to college. So there is a good amount of retention in what we do here. Right.
Now, you may not be privy to some of this information because it's kind of personal to them, but how many lifeguards like that would start at that young age and maybe stay through high school and go on to college, maybe, or pursuing careers in the aquatics field?
A lot of the lifeguards that we hire here in our facility are actually moving on to the medical field. So we attract a lot of nursing students. We attract a lot of respiratory students, cardiac students, PA students. We've had many of our lifeguards go on to be physicians. So it's a great job for anyone looking to join in the medical field.
Wow. Yeah, you just brought something up. I know I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and reaching out to people, and you said something, and I didn't really put two and two together, but I've noticed when I run across people in the medical community, like first responders, healthcare, nurses, doctors, and you start looking at some of their experiences, and things that they've done. You're right. I see a lot that have been lifeguards,
right.
And many of them, I've even run across some that are doctors that are still lifeguards today.
Right.
or swim instructors. They do it as a part-time job, or they do it because they just enjoy doing it. So I think that's when you said that, I didn't really put two and two together until just now, and it's like that kind of explains, I guess, why that is the case, and it makes sense because essentially a lifeguard is a first responder, right? I mean, they're the first
Correct.
one that's going to respond to an incident, and I think you have some background doing some work like that when you were younger too, right? With the
I do.
fire department and things.
I was a
kind of,
firefighter and an EMT.
yeah, is that kind of where you? I mean, did you start with that first? If I don't recall, did you start in that area first?
I started first as a cadet within the fire department at 14 years old, and then I took the lifeguarding class when I was 15.
Okay. Now, being it winter, and I mean, you're in Connecticut, we're in Ohio, so it's probably very similar climate as far as winter time. Actually, I think you guys are colder than we are. Maybe, I don't know, but
we're about 30 degrees right now.
Well, you are warmer than we are today. We're about 5, but
no
anyway.
palm trees though.
No, I want white sand, but I do have white snow. Does that count?
Sure.
But the only problem is when you put water with that, it doesn't make blue water like the tropics. It kind of makes it look kind of like yellow, mucky, ugly-looking water. But anyways.
True.
Not like the Caribbean water that's nice and blue and just inviting right now. But totally lost train of thought where I was going with anything here. So
that's okay. It's Friday.
My mind went to palm trees and beaches, and but anyways.
It's hard not to at this time of year.
Oh yeah. But hey, no, let's get back on topic a little bit. Now, your pool, do you guys have open swim too at a facility like yours?
We do. Our facility is open to the general public.
Okay. So when you have a set time for like open swim, on average, how many people do you have that participate in something like that?
It depends on the day. We get anywhere from 10 to 30 at a time for our open swim.
Okay. Now, how do you, as a supervisor, obviously you have to plan for staffing for something like that. So you really don't know. I mean, some of that might be, based on weather and what's going on in the area too. But how do you plan for something, to schedule people? Do you schedule for a worst case scenario?
That's a great question. We do, and generally, we are employing one lifeguard to every 25 swimmers in our pool, and we never have less than 2. During our busiest peak times in the indoor pool, we're staffing up to 3 or 4 at once. On weekends when we're busier and we have more families here, we'll have up to 4 guards on at one time.
Okay. Now, do you ever get called to fill in as a lifeguard?
I have. I absolutely have.
Okay. Now, that's if that happens, you as a supervisor, if there's other issues, what would happen in that place? I mean, in that case,
the issues would wait until I was done lifeguarding.
Right.
If I'm called to lifeguard, lifeguarding becomes a priority, and anything else can wait.
Okay. Now, I mean, because when I thought about that. It's like, okay, you're a supervisor. What if I had a situation at the front desk or something that required my attention? But I'm sure that probably doesn't happen that often, and that would probably be something where somebody might call off and not show up, and you're waiting for a replacement. Maybe would that be a kind of a typical situation?
It has happened.
Okay.
When you employ younger age employees, it definitely happens.
Yeah, I guess if I was 15, 16-year-old and my girlfriend was mad at me, I'd probably stay home too and talk to her. But no. One of the things is when you are, how many indoor pools do you have there in Bristol?
We have one indoor pool.
Okay, so that's the one where we were at then, right? Okay.
Yes.
And then how many outdoor pools do you have?
We have 2.
And do you open your pools up? What is it? I always get the 2 holidays mixed up. Is it Labor Day? Memorial Day.
We actually open the 3rd week in June, and our season is only 8 weeks long.
Okay.
So we're open from the 3rd week of June to essentially the 3rd week of August.
Okay. Now, is that because you guys are colder than Ohio?
The 8-week season really boils down to budgets.
Okay. I thought maybe it might have been weather. No, I know our pools here typically open, Memorial Day, close Labor Day. I don't know, too much other than that. I just see and that's pretty much for most of the pools around the area because you see them advertised and everything like that. Now, do you do any type of marketing, fundraising? Does your pool or facilities have to do any type of work like that?
We do mostly our own marketing. We have our own website. We have social media, and we also will put out press releases for large-scale aquatic events. Most people generally are aware of what we're doing, and it's quite easy for us to get the word out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about burnout. Is that an issue and a problem with say lifeguards that might be, maybe on the job for too long, or maybe even somebody in your position? Because I'm sure your hours aren't necessarily like an 8 to 5 job Monday through Friday, right?
So fortunately for me, my schedule here is Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, but that doesn't mean that's all I'm here. I'm here when we have special events. I'm here in the evening if there's events or special things going on. Aquatics is not a 9 to 5 job by any means. And when you have a facility that's open over 100 hours a week, you're here when you're needed. And as far as burnout goes, we do have staff members that work during the day that work, upwards of 7 to 8 hours, and they're here, almost 30 hours a week. And those are the guards that you worry about because, they're juggling school, they're juggling second jobs, they're juggling a home life. So it does happen, not so much with our part-time seasonal or part-time employees. We hire so many new ones that we try and keep it fresh. And, those staff members have lighter schedules because they are still in high school and they are balancing many other things that are happening, sports clubs, everything that's extracurricular. So we try to be as sensitive as possible to everyone's lives outside of the pool. But, burnout does happen, and, we offer, EAP to any of our staff members that might need it. But we do our best to make sure that we're on the lookout for that and working with staff members that might need some time off.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, and if you don't know the answers to these questions, that's fine because you may never have ever had a situation like this. But I'm going to use my situation. My daughter's drowning. But whether or not it's a fatal drowning, non-fatal, or an incident, it may not even be involved in the water. It could just be an accident. Something happens. Somebody gets hurt. And you have a young lifeguard, 15, 16, 17 years old, even 18 years old, that sometimes, I don't want to say that they don't understand, the risk, but sometimes, if they feel, maybe, hey, this happened, a child fell and hit their head, got hurt, maybe, or maybe they had to jump in and make a rescue, and the rescue turned out just fine. Is that something that, is troublesome for some lifeguards? I mean, is that something that maybe they second guess about being a lifeguard or second guess about, working in around aquatics?
So you're bringing up a really good point, and I can say that in my aquatic experience, I've had a situation, not at this facility, but at a prior facility that I worked at. It was a Friday night such as this, and I had 3 lifeguards under the age of 18 who responded to an unconscious male patron in the shallow end of our lap pool. And as a supervisor, you always worry about how your lifeguards are going to react, and that's why you do scenario-specific training, and you try and make all of your training as real-world as possible. But I can tell you I have had that situation, and I was incredibly impressed how quickly and how sensically the lifeguards responded. And you'd be amazed at how quickly those lifeguards train, their actions are really dictated by their training. And when you expect there to be hesitancy, there was not. There was no hesitancy to act. They activated the EAP very quickly, and they got the person out, and they acted appropriately. And you do wonder if that will happen. But I can say that from my experience, they acted with their training in mind and executed a really serious rescue that didn't have a favorable outcome expertly. And that's really impressive.
I think you might have talked a little bit about this in the first episode number 28 that we did. Is this the gentleman that, or maybe it might be another story where you have somebody that comes back and talks to your lifeguards about a rescue?
That was unfortunately not the same incident. This one did not have a happy ending.
Oh, okay. But I know you told me a story about a gentleman that was involved in, but who now comes back and talks to lifeguards, so they can kind of put and say, hey, here's you guys have a real important job to do,
right,
and everything. Now, do you receive? Well, is any of your training, is that part of the Red Cross by any chance?
Yes, so all of our lifeguard-specific training is Red Cross training, but we do train with outside entities such as the police department, our dispatch center, our emergency services. So we try and cross-train our employees as much as possible to make sure that if there was an emergency, they know exactly what's going to happen when we call 911. They know exactly what's going to happen when the ambulance arrives, or the fire department, or even working with camp staff or other members of our staff team, whether it's maintenance, whether it's front desk employees. Everyone here has a job, and we do the best that we can to make sure that everyone can cross-train and know how to work with every entity.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that, being you've been in the aquatics field for quite a while, have you seen over your time frame, how has that all changed over the years? I mean, obviously,
there's such an increased focus on training. There's such an increased focus on real-world scenario training and just trying to make it as real as possible, and just trying to hit home the point where that it can happen anywhere, anytime.
Right. Oh yeah. I always say, drowning, it doesn't discriminate, and it shows up when you least expect it, and that's kind of like when we were talking earlier about a lightning strike, and lightning can strike at any point in time. I mean, we had a gentleman here in our town that was pitching softball. There was a thunderstorm 70 miles away, and he was hit in the clear blue sky. And he was hit by a bolt of lightning. He survived, but he was pitching on the pitcher's mound, and the softball got fused to his hand, of all things. But it was on a clear blue sky. There was thunderstorm like 70 miles away, and the lightning bolt traveled across a blue sky and decided to come down there where he was at. So, I mean, drowning could be a lot like that, where it just, doesn't discriminate, and it shows up when you least expect it.
Agreed.
What are the? I had a question in mind here. Let me take a look at my notes here real quick while I'm thinking. But we were talking a little bit about real life situations and training. Now, being that you are part of the Red Cross, or you're following some of the Red Cross, I know. Are you familiar with Drennan's Dream?
Yes, I am.
Okay, yeah, because I know his talk.
His story is showcased in the Red Cross videos. Right.
Yeah, and his story is a very touching story. Very capable swimmer, was swimming, in a competition. I think it was on a Saturday. He went back to the same pool on a Sunday just for like an open swim, and he drowned there. And but yeah, Bill, his father, has a very, very, very compelling story, but some really good information. And I know some of their training now is part of the Red Cross curriculum, which now goes out to facilities like yours to be able to put that into your training. So
yes, and that kind of storyline, that kind of putting a real life touch on it affects the staff. They talk about it. It makes it real, and they really do take it seriously.
Right. No, I totally agree. I mean, we talk to aquatics professionals and pools and lifeguards and families, and because again, I go back to my situation. As a parent, you go to a pool, there's lifeguards there, and you can go and listen to any one of these stories, and the parents will always tell you they didn't think it would happen to them, and that they, it was only a split second. It was only a second. I only took my eyes off of them for a second,
right.
Or I just didn't see them, or I just turned around and answered a question, whatever it is, and they're believing that there's a lifeguard there. Just like we were talking about earlier. And then you go out onto open waters and beaches, and that's a whole different scenario as far as lifeguarding, which we won't really get into that. But whoops, dropped my pen. Now I can't take my notes. How's that?
Oh, no.
No, the world will come to an end. But no, that's I know we've been talking a lot about lifeguards and everything. Let's just real quickly as we begin to wrap up here. On other staff members, maybe a front desk person or other people that maybe maintenance people, do they have to be trained in any like CPR because they are working in an aquatics facility? Do they have to have any other additional like first aid training or anything like that?
So usually that's going to be a facility-specific requirement. Here in Bristol, we offer CPR and first aid training to any and all of our staff. So we don't discriminate or we allow training for all of our staff, and we encourage it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I highly recommend it. I took it, and I never thought I would have an opportunity to use it, and I did.
And you did.
Yeah. You shared a post yesterday of a situation very similar to that, where somebody, which I jumped on and shared too, and because I had the opportunity to perform CPR on my wife. We have a horse. Well, we don't anymore. We have goats. We traded our horses in for goats because I felt like goats are a little more safer than horses. But my wife actually fell off a horse, and she broke her back in 7 places, 11 ribs, a scapula, punctured lung, 2 brain hemorrhages, and just all kinds of things. And by the time I got to her, she had foam coming out of her mouth. Her eyes were rolled up in her head, and immediately I knew exactly what to do. Instead of I immediately alerted the 911 system to go ahead and get help. Went back to her and noticed that by that time she was already blue. So rolled her over on her back and started doing CPR. I think it was
your training brain kicked in.
Yeah, and I mean, my first set of CPR, when my daughter drowned, one part of our foundation was we provided CPR training to people that didn't have it or couldn't afford it or whatever. And the 2 first responders that were the paramedics on call that day that took care of my daughter, they were part of our board, and they were certified through the American Red Cross and I think the American Heart Association, and they gave these CPR classes for us. And, so that was my first training, and I was always scared to death that I wouldn't know what to do. And then of course when I was coaching and got involved in high school and collegiate level coaching, I was required to have first aid and CPR. And now I'm a foster parent and I'm required to have first aid and CPR. And so when the opportunity, and I don't want to say opportunity because it really was not an opportunity I was looking for, but when the situation happened with my wife, you're right. I mean, it's just like, everything that we were taught, it did. It's just like there was really no thought process. And I hear stories, especially people in healthcare that work, like nurses and people that work in emergency rooms, things like that, when, real serious or maybe first responders that go to an accident scene. And I'm sure that's probably real similar to a lifeguard and people in aquatics where, they're up in their chair doing their job. It looks like it's fun. Hey, that'd be a really great job to do. But then, when a whistle blows or an alert goes off, it's almost like, it's automatic. I mean, that's the way the training should be, right?
It is. It's definitely an automatic response, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it because there's part of me that, that says that'd be cool to be part of that, something like that. I think, just
your training saved a life.
Yeah. I mean, it just, but then the other side of me, I don't know if it's a right brain, left brain thing, kicks in and says, I don't know if I want to have that responsibility, but we have to have people like that in the world. And, even though my daughter drowned close to a lifeguard, I hold no ill will against that lifeguard. I mean, that's a decision. I mean, he was 16 years old then, and that was over 25 years ago. So what is he now, like 40 or something like that? So probably has kids of his own and whatnot. And that's kind of why I was asking if there's programs for lifeguards if they wind up in a situation where it could be very traumatizing to them.
Absolutely.
Just regardless of what an outcome. I mean, it could be a very basic, very simple rescue, and just getting somebody out of the water that maybe hurt themselves and they're cut or whatever. But but at the same time, that's got to be a real tough issue. One other thing here, as far as a job is concerned. If somebody's listening to this, because we have a lot of listeners that I know that are young lifeguards, aquatic professionals, or people that might be thinking about, if they wanted to go and say hold a position like yours, and what type of things should they be thinking about? What do they need to be studying in school, or where should their focus be?
That's a great question. So my focus in school was exercise science and just science in general. And, having the first responder experience, becoming a lifeguard at age 15, that set me up in the right realm. So, first aid training, lifeguard training, any type of emergency rescue training, and just, you're going to want to work with the Red Cross to get the Red Cross lifeguard training, or Ellis, having that, nationally recognized certification, and also, management training. That's a huge part of it. I can be the best lifeguard in the world, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be a great manager. So having a healthy balance between the emergency training and also supervisory and leadership training.
Okay. Yeah, that's because, I wouldn't know. I mean, I would obviously think probably health and different types of subjects like that, if I was going to go into healthcare, would be important. But again, the everyday practical experience, I think, would also, actually going out and doing the job as a young lifeguard and maybe getting involved in, as a swim instructor and then getting your certifications. On average,
yes.
With a lot of your certifications, I know with a lot of jobs, I mean, you have to have continuing education. Is that something similar to, is that something you have to do also in your position?
That's an interesting point that you just brought up, because currently in Red Cross lifeguarding, there are no continuing education units or credits required. You need to recertify your certification, and so you need to come in and do an in-water and also a written skills test every 2 years. But there's nothing that mandates ongoing continuous training other than in-service requirements. And that's something that's definitely one of my focuses as an aquatic supervisor, is making sure that I am instituting that continued education. So, as an EMT, we're going to continuing education for our careers, and also, for law enforcement, police departments, emergency responders, they're having to do continuing education. But at this time, there is really no regulations on lifeguards in that respect.
Yeah, I mean,
another one of my pet projects.
I worked in financial services, and I had to, to keep my licensing, I had to have, I was FINRA licensed through, which used to be the NASD, through NASDAQ and for investments and things, and
right.
We'd have to have every 2 years continuing education and insurance continuing education, and just, gosh, it's like every time you turn around, you was having to do.
Right.
I even have to do, as a foster parent, I have to go to continuing education every 2 years. I have to have so many, credits, to be able to be to keep my licensing as a foster parent. Now I just, I think it's an ever-evolving situation with aquatics, and one of the things I was talking with a gentleman earlier today was in the aquatics end of things. So many things in aquatics still operate like it did 20, 30 years ago, and I think as we were talking earlier with the technology starting to come into play, and there's probably also technology. I mean, it's probably parts of your job that go into safety, which we can talk about. We could probably spend a whole nother show just talking about facility maintenance. The pumps, the drains, the covers. I mean, suction. Just all kinds of stuff. I actually have a gentleman coming on next week. His name is Tim Coleman. So if you're listening to this show, I highly recommend you tune in to that one. We'll be recording next week, so he'll be coming out probably about 2 weeks from now. But he talks about a lot of the pools that were built back in the 60s that were built with either conduit or steel piping or copper that were pre-PVC or whatever, and because of corrosion, and it changes even though they have a pump, and then of course the pumps wear out, and then they put the same size pump back on at the pool that they had, but because of the corrosion, the inner diameter of the pipes gets smaller, which then creates more suction. Okay, but they put in a pump that's when they should really downsize the pump because they're not testing those things. So he's going to be an interesting program. So a wealth of information there in a whole different aspect of water safety that I know we probably didn't talk about here, but I'm sure just real quick, that's probably part of your job too, right?
Absolutely. Pool maintenance is such an important part of aquatics, and having, regular replacement schedules for our larger pieces of equipment is integral to our integral into our operations.
Right. And, again, water quality, the chemicals, all that stuff, I think the average person takes for granted. You jump in, you can smell the chlorine, or you can smell it, your eyes burn, you go home, it's like, I was in a pool today, but it all serves a purpose. Well, Jaimie, I really appreciate your time. This was kind of short notice here, and I put you on the spot, but I really appreciate you taking your time, and I hold you in high regard. You know your stuff when it comes to this type of things, and that's why I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. And we have some other guests coming on that work in some larger facilities that also are going to kind of give us their day-to-day challenges that they're faced, because again, it's the end of January. Hard to believe it's end of January already that when we're recording this. So springtime is just around the corner, and a lot of people are gearing up and getting ready to start the season, hiring, training, getting their facilities ready, all those things. So it's only going to get busier from this point on. And if you're not busy already, wait, you will be, right?
That's very true.
Okay. And we will have our show notes. And again, make sure you get back over to our episode number 28 that we did back in October. Actually, it went out on October 18th of 2018, where Jaimie talks a little bit more about her background and gives you a lot more information there of at least overall water safety. In today's episode, this was a little bit more geared towards the supervision and training and everything, what goes on to that. And especially if we are speaking to those that may be listening that are looking at pursuing a career or furthering their aquatics profession. So make sure that you get in touch with Jaimie. I'm sure she would be more than happy to maybe mentor some special people along the way and
absolutely
help them out there. So with that being said, you guys are awesome. I hope
Thank you, Rick.
Oh, you're welcome. And I hope if somebody's out there and there's some place where there are palm trees, take a picture and send it to us. We would appreciate
yes,
that. We'll frame it and we'll put it up. So because I know I have a lot of listeners and I have some listeners in Brazil, Sao Paulo, and then I have a lot of listeners in Australia, and Florida and other nice, Central America and whatnot. So I know there's people out there that are probably listening and looking at a palm tree right now. Take a cell phone pic, send it to me at rick@thekelsgroup.com. I'll forward that on to Jaimie, but we'll have her contact information also in our show notes. So you guys are all awesome. Keep up the great work. We will talk to you guys next week.
Hey, I want to thank everyone for staying to the end of today's episode number 42. It is a wrap. It's in the books. The end of January has come, and it is now going out. Really cold, but Hey, make sure you hit up Jaimie on her LinkedIn page. She will respond to your message quickly. Also, don't forget to send me that picture of your palm tree beach, someplace nice and warm, where you're sitting and looking at it right now. So, just to give us a little bit of inspiration and motivation on what's to come. Hey, make sure you get over to thekelsgroup.com, subscribe to our podcast. Also, get over to Apple Podcast and rate our podcast. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know how much you like the show. Also, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Google Podcasts, and others. So with that being said, you guys are awesome. Also, don't forget to tune in next week. Our guest is Tim Coleman. We'll be talking about facility maintenance, water quality, and all those things involving water safety. So, and also drowning prevention. So with that being said, you guys are awesome. We'll see you next week.